Let's think of a name real quick before we start.
Well, no, you already started.
It's Dimensional Cascade. It's just
But there should be
Dimensional
the second
Cascade
should
talking
have a name.
about stuff.
It's Dimensional Cascade.
Yeah.
So you.
How about Dimensional Cascades?
That's so stupid.
I don't know.
Good start. Strong beginning.
We're trying to have brains.
Okay,
We're
okay.
trying to synergize. Synergy.
So we used to have a podcast, and then we played games on the internet, and now we felt like talking about things again. And so we're going to have a podcast with less setup, but just talking to the camera.
More, obviously, very, very informal.
This is a strong start, and I have not been drinking.
Which is a hindrance in this particular case.
Yeah, so for those who are watching,
Benefit.
Brendan is still packing up from the last game, and then these two hooligans in their matching plaid shirts are wanting to wax poetic about the game that we all love so much, Age of Sigmar.
Brendan, do you really need to account?
We are right on the cusp this weekend. So, this weekend is the new 2019 General's Handbook coming out, so we're right on the cusp of that. And these two have some opinions about everything going on in the hobby, and they're here to share. So, all right, guys, take it away, and I'm going to run to the restroom while you do that.
So format-wise, just format real quick.
Sure, yeah.
So I think we're going to try to do this a few times. The format, we have 3 recurring segments. The first is a special topic, whatever like the topic of the day is. The second is a segment, best segment, called We Disagree, where we tell you why other people are wrong. And then third is a faction review. And like if you're super amazing at everything, you will probably just really judge our faction review and do your own They're Wrong segment. But it's really intended to be a walkthrough on how a faction works.
We disagree.
Yeah, their own We Disagree.
Yeah, everybody gets
They
a
can
we
disagree. Yeah.
Just ours is on camera.
Right.
They can disagree,
And
they're just wrong.
And better.
Yeah, they're wrong.
And better.
But they might be right if they would disagree with our faction review, like that, because we're not going to be experts on everything. We're just going to talk through like what you should know about the faction, what you should understand about it, how to play against it.
Yes, just very, very broad strokes, very informal. So if we forget some pieces here and there, don't grab your pitchforks and rant and rave. No one will.
They can just leave comments.
Yeah, leave comments. We definitely encourage feedback. We want feedback.
We
Please.
may even put this in the podcast's application at some point in time once technology becomes developed with which we can use to do that. And, very important caveat, we learn to use it.
Yes, all of those things are true. So without any further ado, so the special topic that we chose this week, which seems, we just got done with the tournament this previous weekend, like maybe some of you out there, and we had sort of some thoughts on sort of a slow burning sort of discussion in the community between strength of schedule in tournaments versus skill points as tiebreaker.
Let's be clear, like the TO at the last event, Andrew, great guy, asked, do people have opinions about this? And I went on a random 5-minute rant, and everyone sort of smiled and nodded and was like, all right, that was a lot of words, we're not going to object. And we went with strengths of schedule, but probably did not explain it very well.
I think most people just want to roll dice and are not particularly
and they looked at me like I was, just, that's fine, we'll just, oh my god, there's a lot of words.
Brendan, you take it on? Bye, Brendan.
This is an attempt to
Everybody who
coherently
has never seen
explain.
Brendan, you just did.
Yes, sure. Well, we're going to attempt to be coherent at the very least. Well, let's start with you, because you're the one that had your 5-minute rant and had to clearly sort of
just have a lot of opinions.
Lots of opinions. What is your stance on this?
So it depends on the number of games, and it depends on the environment you want to have.
And sort of let's preface before we get any further. Correct me if I'm wrong. As it currently stands, the general consensus in most, sort of the general tournament community at large seems to run with kill points more often than not, that I've seen.
I don't know. I think that
I think there's a preference because that's easier to calculate.
Yeah. I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying the prevalence seems to be more heavily tilted towards kill points.
In the Pacific Northwest, it seems to be most usually kill points. We don't know what it is in other regions, but I think Ricky's right that often it's going to just default to kill points because the math is easy.
Yes, and many of the battle reports I read and tournament recaps that I read also tend to be more heavily skewed towards kill points.
Okay. So,
obviously, I don't have any data in front of me to give you hard numbers, but that's just sort of anecdotally my observation.
And I think the advantages of kill points are really clear. The advantage of kill points is it feels more within your control.
Sure. It's very sort of cut and dry, very sort of binary. Either you killed the thing or you didn't.
Well, and when you walk into a game, like imagine you play 3 games in a tournament,
Mm-hmm.
okay, and the pairings process is based on the result of each of your games.
Obviously, other than the first round.
And so the degree to which you control your strength of schedule is purely based on the pairings and then how those people do in subsequent or prior games. And it's actually, you control the prior, but you don't control how your opponents do in subsequent games.
Yeah.
Right?
Of
You
course.
control the prior because if you win game 1, you've controlled the prior strength of schedule of your game 2 opponent. But you have no control over your round 1 opponent's strength of schedule. So for example, at the tournament we were talking about, I played on table 1 and lost, and ended up, you would think the person playing on table 1 and losing would have a higher strength of schedule, but because of the results of my other opponents of the event, I actually ended up in 7th as one of the lower 2-1s. Just because of, and those are, I think the reason people don't like strength of schedule is that it's perceived to be, those are variables outside your control.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Whereas
I think
kill
that's
points
a
are in
valid
your control.
complaint.
Yeah. So that's the basic advantage to using kill points. I actually think that there's bigger advantages to using strength of schedule, especially in one-day events, especially in more casual events, but I think overall. And there's 2 big ones. First, it promotes a different kind of environment.
Yes, I think that's the key.
When you are playing for kill points, and kill points is a tiebreaker, especially if kill points differential is a tiebreaker, a really experienced player going into round 1 against a new player at an event has every incentive to grind them into the dust.
Yeah, and more
And
often than
just
not, they will.
demoralize them and give them a very negative play experience.
Sure.
And that is the incentive structure of the event.
Mhm.
And it's probably not worth the slight addition to control of the outcome to add that much negativity.
I agree.
Here's the other variable, and I think this one is a little bit less obvious. Strength of schedule is agnostic to how you win, and it's agnostic to the type of list you take as long as you get the win. There are lists that win by tabling their opponent, say Gristlegore, and I'm going to use examples that I know, right? But like Gristlegore wants to get in and murder everything, and that's how they table their opponent.
Yeah.
There are lists that win by fucking with stuff, but like if you take Zinch, like I'm often losing on kill points when I win the game.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of other lists like that where they're going for marginal wins, they're going for shenanigan wins, they're going for barely close wins.
So they're squeaking it out.
That's me.
And that is the intended design of the list. It's not designed to murder everything.
Mhm.
And so when you use a kill point tiebreaker system, especially in a system where you have not enough rounds to have the winner be a potential X1, which would mean basically in order to get that you need 4 rounds for 8 people, 5 rounds for 16, 6 rounds for 32. Unless you have that many rounds, you really benefit particular build types by using kill points as a tiebreaker.
Yes.
And this was a big issue in 8th. I mean, this was a big reason why kill points.
Issues in 8th.
Yeah, a big reason why a lot of lists became invalid regardless of their record, because in Swedish, the margin of victory and then the Swedish difference is what determined the outcome, which means you couldn't just win, you had to win big. And that really limits what's viable in the meta in a kind of not as fun way. So I think those are the 2 reasons I would push for strength of schedule.
Yeah, absolutely. It's to sort of kind of expand on that a little bit while simplifying at the same time. Not to say that what you're saying was overly complex. I just wanted to distill the essence of what you're saying while adding my own points. I agree with pretty much everything you just said. I think as a TO, and the various TOs out there who may or may not be watching, who may or may not be deliberating over this sort of decision point over the coming months and our year until the next GHB comes along and changes the whole meta again. It's really the decision between, the main 2 decisions are ultimately the culture you sort of want to encourage at your events and sort of understanding the design differences between different battle tomes and factions. Not every faction, not every battle tome, not every list is designed to, as you kind of already touched on, designed to blow you off the table. Just because you tabled somebody, just because you gain 1,800 kill points in a battle doesn't necessarily always indicate your level of dominance in that game. You and I have played games where I've easily doubled kill points on you, and you still pretty much had control of the game for the majority of the game. Sort of board controls, objective points, so on and so forth. So it doesn't necessarily always mean the same thing.
Yeah, and I think the one thing I would add there is like it's not about giving bonuses to lists that win in weird ways. It's about being totally agnostic to how an army is intended to win.
That's basically what I'm saying. An army that Gloomspite wins, a Gloomspite army that goes 5-0 is probably not going to take many games 2,000 points, 1,500 points plus off their opponent.
I don't know if he's ever touched someone.
That's what I'm saying.
In any game ever.
But that army may very well prove to be dominant throughout the course of that tournament. But that may not necessarily be reflected in his kill points, whereas strength of schedule and something like that can more maybe accurately capture that.
Yeah.
It's
more accurate. It's also more in.
Yeah. Neither system is perfect. One-day events, strength of schedule, I think should be sort of encouraged without question, just because of the inherent nature of one-day events that tend to be more casual, smaller sample size, obviously, so kill points tend to mean less over smaller games, I think, or a smaller amount of games. I think in general, I would probably err on the side of strength of schedule, but I think there's a case to be made for 5-6 game tournaments where maybe kill points is more readily considered.
Yeah, I think that if you're okay with having the hardware environment and you're not worried about the potential negative play experience because you feel like all of your players are pretty experienced, the conditions under which strength of schedule is not a problem for how lists win events, to me, is having an X+1 round event, because by the time you're at the point where you almost have double a limb. Like if you have a 32-person event, you're gonna have 5-0 after 5 rounds.
Sure.
If you have a 32-person event that's 6 rounds long, go ahead with kill points. Because if you really have someone consistently win, it's not going to be as huge a deal that they don't have the parries.
Yeah, I think so.
Theoretically, you can do that at 32 because if you have the 5-0 and they have a perfect record, you're good. But it feels like at those kind of events, I don't know, maybe it's fine at 32. I feel like that extra round allows the record to outweigh the tiebreaker more often.
And
Or 5-16.
I don't think either.
I think it's more common than 6-32.
Yeah, sure, for sure. I don't think either of us want to belabor this topic. I would just sort of want to wrap it up to say that I think we're both kind of on the same page here, generally erring on the side of strength of schedule. I would definitely say it's incumbent on TOs to understand sort of the type of event they're wanting to run and to sort of have a kind of a nose for the culture of their local community or who might be coming into their events, which is to say generally 2-day GTs tend to bring out a different kind of player than say the one-dayers. The one-dayers tend to be, generally speaking, a little bit more on the casual side. I think generally the audience that more in mass will attend 2-day GTs has an understanding of kill points and acceptance of that. So that's also one factor to just keep in mind. Culture, like I said. Anything further to add to that?
I don't totally agree with the last point because I feel like TOs don't just flex to the surrounding culture. They help define the culture of the area, and they can overdo it, right? Like you can go overboard. You can be like, hey, I'm in an area filled with gray plastic. I'm going to run an event and require everyone to be fully painted, and you can't podium without highlights, and no one's going to show up to your event. But at the same time, like you end up having what remains as a culture in the area partially be a product of how the events are designed. And like, for example, adding overall scoring to events has a big impact on painting in a region.
It does, and we've seen this firsthand, and other regions have seen this firsthand, the ones that are more inclined to go down that route for sure. I'm not suggesting that TOs completely kowtow to their surrounding culture, however negative or crunchy it may be. I'm just suggesting it's a deft balance, is all I'm saying.
What you could do, though, I mean, you could take the other extreme and you could be like, let's just allow Monstrous Arcanum, because that's balanced. Forge World's always put out balanced models, and people would be like, we're going to go to your events, but that was probably a bad decision.
Yeah.
That would be, a thing you could do. I'm looking at something else.
Everybody loved it.
Yeah, people loved the Sparkle parties.
You're still talking about it. That's how awesome it was.
I love my 600-point dragon.
Yeah, you loved it.
All right, next up.
My point of the strength of schedule is I love it because it allowed me to beat Matt in the last tournament. And
it's ultimately what matters.
That's really all that matters. Yes. He was below the fold, I was above. And there you go.
Compelling argument. All right.
Okay.
Next topic is we disagree.
Well, yes. Let's start with sort of kind of touching on.
And I apologize to everybody watching for this segment already.
Let's start with sort of the GHB thoughts.
Okay.
And then
we're going to disagree about GHB thoughts.
We'll tag in. We disagree at the end of that, and then segue nicely into.
All I care about is the disagreement.
Sure.
People are so wrong.
So as if you're watching this, you probably know or have heard about. The General's Handbook 2019 releases this weekend in your local friendly game store and Games Workshop, and some, I would say some some noteworthy changes. I wouldn't say anything as meta devastating as 2018 seemed to be. 2018 seemed to change a lot as far as.
I think the big meta stuff will come in the FAQ. Because most of the meta Daughters is a meta change.
Yeah, the Daughters change is significant for sure.
But most of the other top of the meta is the new list, and so we have to wait for the FAQ.
They're saving the guts of the meat and potatoes for the FAQ in July.
I don't think on purpose. I think just because.
No, because
of the timing.
Sure. So quick hit thoughts on GHB as far as any scenario changes that stuck out to you, any point increases, decreases that stuck out to you. Obviously, we don't. Most of
all theoretical.
Most of this has been leaked already. I haven't seen it incomplete. Have you seen it incomplete? I haven't seen.
I watched a podcast where a guy took the GHB. It was like, all right, on this page, these are the changes.
Okay, I haven't seen that.
On this page, these are the changes.
Well, you have the screen up the whole time. Well, you surely have thoughts. What are your thoughts?
So this is before my complaints. This is just general thoughts.
Yeah, just general thoughts for someone tuning in. It's like, oh, what does this guy think
He
about?
got really enveloped in the complaints. So besides the points changes, looking at the actual General's Handbook changes, I think that my big thought is about the terrain placement rules, and without knowing the caveats for the other terrain, I think that my thought is that GW has put out a terrain placement rules set that is dependent on people buying and using a lot of GW terrain, and it has very restrictive placement of faction terrain, except that it specifically says that each player takes turns placing 10 pieces of terrain, and then you place the faction terrain. And my worry about this whole segment is when TOs take half the page and not the other half of the page. Because if you take the whole page and people control the board layout at every game, then the really restrictive draconian placement of faction terrain is not an issue. But if they take half the page, it's going to screw people over.
I worry about this too, but I think we both know what already the smart TOs are going to do and the experienced TOs are going to do.
He's going to what?
They're just going to fucking ignore it.
Well, that would be fine. I don't mind if they ignore it, but
they're going to ignore it.
I think that what will be the common response, I think it will be a common response to say we're going to ignore the thing that says we have to buy a bunch of GW terrain, but still require the placement restrictions, and that's where I think we hit the danger.
First of all, this sort of the most rigid reading of these terrain rules is only going to matter at Adepticon, at LVO, at the Battle Bunker events.
Why? I mean,
because
we use
I
Triumph
do
now.
not see any TOs like independent tournament circuit, whatever, ITC TOs, local TOs taking these terrain rules. Maybe the first month after GHB comes out and people are like playing with it, and quickly everybody's gonna be like, this is fucking stupid, this is time consuming, nobody even has this much Games Workshop fucking terrain.
But that's my point, they're gonna skip that part of it. That's my worry, is that they're gonna skip the Games Workshop part, and they're gonna say, we're not gonna reset tables every time. And it's not about the Games Workshop part. You could skip the Games Workshop part. It's that the positioning restrictions of the faction terrain is in the same page as the thing that says players have agency over how the terrain is displayed on the table every game. And when you do the position restriction, but you don't allow players to say, crap, I need to make sure I have my positions, I'm gonna place this huge thing in a corner, you're just gonna have a lot of dead terrain that people's army is centered around, because they're gonna walk up to a table and be like, all right. So,
And I think that will happen for a month, and TOs will be like, this is stupid.
I hope so.
And they're gonna
Yeah.
change it.
I think that's my general concern. Other than that, I feel like the most of the rest of the General's Handbook I'm really, really happy about.
Yeah. Maybe I just have more faith in the collective sort of common sense and goodwill of our local tournament organizers. At least in our area, I feel pretty good about most, if not all, of our TOs. I think they may do 1 or 2 events where they play around with this, and they're going to quickly realize this is stupid and move the hell on with their lives. Because Games Workshop has a noted history of putting out all kinds of quote-unquote official rules that they want people to follow in their various supplements, and half the time we don't fucking use them because they're stupid.
Is there anything we don't use in General's Handbook 2018?
I'd have to look through. There's plenty of stuff we don't use in the core rulebook. Sometimes people
What?
don't even use freaking the goddamn mystical terrain dice. There's 2 of my games last tournament that I didn't do it because we pulled out our dice and like, do you care about this? No, I don't care about this. Let's just put the dice away and we move the hell on with our lives. Nobody cares. Generally speaking, 2 freaking intelligent people who exercise a decent amount of common sense, are easygoing, are gonna get together and be like, this is stupid, let's not do this.
I hope so. I like the fact those dice rolls. I
think they're
honestly,
okay.
I don't feel like I've experienced enough of the game for them not to just be additional cognitive burden. I feel like I've played 50 more games. I love them.
Sure. I don't think they add enough to the game to really matter, and it's just one more stupid thing I have to deal with. And 90% of the people I encounter don't really care.
Do you not
The
enjoy
problem
from
I have
on
with
this?
them is that there's only one really relevant
I don't.
one, which is arcane, and then the rest are just kind of garbage.
The sacrifice for the rerolls ones is good for some units.
So, quick hit,
Okay.
GHB point changes specifically that stood out to us.
But that's where we should go to the we disagree. Because I think that like
There's
that's
something
gonna be the
very
middle.
specific
Okay, go
I
ahead,
want to
go
talk
ahead.
about with we disagree, but I want to talk about point changes first. Do you want to?
You guys are disagreeing about.
We're disagreeing about disagreeing.
No, okay. We could go to points changes after, because the problem with the reviews of the points changes is they're based on whether or not they're going to shift the existing army structure, and that misses the entire point of what these points changes do. Like if you look at the points changes and you say, is this going to change the relative power of the existing list? And you say, not really. And then you say, okay, well, these changes don't matter. You're missing the whole point. And the point of these changes is that it's supposed to make bad units better and good units worse. And it doesn't have a huge impact. With the exception of Daughters, most of these changes did not have a huge impact in inter-book balance. It has a huge impact on intra-book balance. And if you look at the changes within a book, the more played units went up and the less played units went down.
Yep.
And then what we should get into is usually not enough. But
as most reasonable people I've spoken to are on the side of GW using a light touch.
right, better than overdoing it.
Yeah, let's bracket it down before we have a huge overcorrection. In theory, these changes should be happening once a year. There's even been rumors that it might start happening biannually.
Right.
Biannually would be amazing.
But I think that, so like just to, before you, if your concern with the General's Handbook changes is it doesn't really change how you play the existing list, you are missing the point of the changes.
Yes.
You should make
Well,
bad
it's
units slightly better and
Yeah.
good units slightly worse.
Yep. And it should encourage list diversity as far as
Right.
you're making you think, oh, this unit's 90 points now. Maybe I'll play around with that. We'll see how
Right.
that goes.
So now the specific changes.
I mean, we could get into the weeds all day here. A couple that stood out to me, just off the top of my head, I thought they would have gotten more of a nerf as far as evocators are concerned.
Oh, I think 220 is okay.
I think it's okay. I think they still would have been fine at 240. I don't think anybody would have cried with them at 240. I think there's a problem. I think there's a problem with every mixed order list, or almost many a tournament order list I've seen is eyeline and evocators. Like it's always evocators that are getting brought in to supplement an existing list.
Yeah,
that's kind of no.
You could have put him to 240. Yeah.
I think 240.
Honestly, I think Stormcast wise, the ballista feels like a bigger issue to me. Like
The ballista also, I feel like, could have gone up to 120, 130
Right.
and still been.
I think
completely-
120 would have been good. I think it's weird to me that didn't get a 20% hike because I don't think I've seen one functional Stormcast list that didn't run multiple. Do we know what did Surcharge change to?
Don't know.
I actually don't know that off the top of my head what Gabriel changed to. Probably not enough. Probably not enough.
Change it all?
Don't know.
I would imagine he at least got 10%, but who knows? The fact that we're not even talking about Gabriel, though, is interesting.
Yeah.
I'm actually not that worried about Gabriel. As
I just
opposed
don't like
to-
the mechanic.
I don't like the
Yeah.
mechanic either, but I think when people see Gabriel, they know what's
Well,
going on
and
with
he's
Gabriel.
even if they don't nerf the points, the nerf to command points is gonna hurt him
That's a good point.
because he's not gonna be able to buy a couple extra by not buying a unit of liberators,
Right.
and so he really will just have the +2. Is it to the charge that it gives
It's
him?
+3 per command point.
Well, yeah, all you need is 2. All you need is 1 battalion and your turn 1 command
Yeah.
point. So that's it.
Yeah,
so
but then
it's
you're
not
not
gonna
doing
be-
anything else.
Right.
Yeah, but still.
That gives you a bubble of
Yeah.
+6.
So yeah, it's but I still think that nerfs them a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah, I can see that. I think Zinch, I think the summary for me, by the way, is that almost everything that was really bad went down, but none of the things that were really bad went down enough to make them make sense to take. And that's okay, because what should
RIP
happen...
Flamers.
Huh?
RIP Flamers.
Everything related to flavors is still just awful.
I know.
Um,
Super.
But what will happen is when no one takes them for another year, they'll tick down again.
Still won't be enough.
And when
It'll
no
never-
one takes
it'll
them
be
for another year, they'll tick
we-
But like that's
3.0 will be out by the time they get Flamers.
But that's maybe they do it every 6 months, that would be great, but it's
Sure.
a good method to be like, all right,
I agree.
instead of just massively taking these down, we'll take them down a little bit.
Yeah, and these massive, especially in 40K, when you see the massive overcorrections, this is where often you have problems for the next year
Right.
with something being supremely under.
Opening up. I have to say, I tried really hard to look through all of the point reductions in the Zinch book and look for something I could get an advantage from. Something where you'd be like, aha, they opened that up. Nothing. I mean, yeah, there's an argument. I think Change Host became viable from not viable, but there's nothing where I was like, oh, sweet, they missed something there. I'm gonna build around that.
It's interesting too because as many people with their ear to the ground on such things, and all of us certainly anticipated leading up to this, is like, oh, freaking Enlightened are definitely Enlightened. We're like on the top 3 list of like people you can expect to get hit with the Nerf bat, right alongside evocators and units like that, and they were actually really.
Plus 20, I mean, it matters, but it wasn't. So I was
Negligible.
hoping they would go to 170 and fearing they would go to 180, and they went to 160. But my post Jarvis Hammock 2019 list, I'm experimenting with a unit of 6 instead of 9.
Sure. I mean, an increase was the right call.
Yeah.
We could debate all day whether it should have been more or less, but I feel it's probably about right. Maybe 10 more would have been nice, but
I think my big complaint is that Lord's Change is still 380 compared to like every other greater demon and greater rat thing.
let's see. Keeper is 360.
You know what?
Um,
My prog bonus is still 300, so fuck off.
Probably gonna get
That is weird, right? Like, well, no. You're not in the book. You're gonna get fact.
You're gonna get
Your
fact.
truck boss is gonna get faxed down
By the
like
way,
150 and
the-
just still be mildly over
Yeah.
The tournament meta waits for bated breath. Well, basically all the tier S, tier A, freaking
What is
army
tier
books.
S?
Like
You're so fancy.
tier S, you've never heard of this?
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is. I'm always scared to ask,
a
like,
gaming,
oh, I'm gonna be an
it's like
ignorant
it's like a
gamer.
gaming term, like you would hear in like competitive fighting games and stuff, like Smash Brothers.
What does S stand for?
I don't even.
Is it tier super?
It's basically the top tier, where basically it's
I
like
just want to know.
it's
what
like
S
borderline. It's like borderline.
Alright.
You know what? When I hear
New
tier
rule.
S, yeah.
You can't use words like tier or terms like tier S.
Hey, this is what the
you don't know what they
When I
fucking
hear
I
tier
know
S,
what the
you know what I
intent
see?
is.
I see you as a Magic player sitting across from me, like power shuffling your cards for my entire turn. And I'm like, tier S, dude. Really?
Fine, whatever. I was trying to internet it up.
You know what I'm talking about with the
Yeah, I get it.
card
I
shuffling?
get
Like, do,
I get it.
I'm so hardcore, bro.
like a competitive poker player. I'm just like bridging freaking cards. Yeah, I get it.
Tier S.
So the top tier,
There we go.
Fire,
We understand.
Fire Slayers, Slanesh, freaking Flesh Eater Courts, Skaven, all the 2019 battle tomes.
Yeah.
The ones that
You're
really
totally right.
need some attention
Yeah.
are for the July fact, which is fine. They need it
Yeah.
as long as it gets there eventually. Fucking the Sylvaneth fact will be out before the fucking book gets to
The
people.
real question
So
is,
whatever.
does that particular diaper baby unit double in points before you build them all?
I'm gonna wait. By the way, just quick aside, all those units on the GW website are sold the fuck out. I looked today. You can't even, they're sold out. All the broken Fire Slayer units are
They
sold
were
out.
sold out the first weekend.
Oh, I'm sure. You can get them on eBay. Don't go on eBay, by the way. I want to buy them. But sold out.
Okay.
So,
Other
yeah.
point changes.
Our main pull-up. Well, we can
I love what they did to KO.
Yeah, KO.
That was the biggest
I didn't
thing.
want to bore anybody with my KO
but
thoughts.
that's the best example of why the internet's wrong. They're like, Sky Wardens went down. No one takes Sky Wardens.
Sky Wardens are okay.
That's why they should go down.
Yeah, exactly. Sky Wardens.
They're still probably.
They're still not enough. They're okay. I mean, this is KO's problems are systemic. They need a new book. They need some additional battle line options. They need
Are
some.
they systemic?
Oh yes, they are. And they
What do you
need-
mean by systemic in this
Like
context?
the whole. I mean, the fundamental sort of rule writing of the book needs to be revised. They have no battalions to speak of that are meaningful. They have one battle line. Almost every other
Yeah.
AOS 2.0 battle tome has like a battle line you can take contingent upon taking some other things. They just have one strict battle line.
Well, they have the problem with old dwarves where like the way to play them is a gunline.
Sure. I mean, and there's really, and again, I'm glad you brought that up. There's only one way to play KO, really.
Right.
I mean, essentially, yeah, you can have your party bow, but essentially it's the same thing. You're just having your deep strike.
I love that dropped 40 points. I hope it drops more. I hope
The
big
frigate's
one
actually
drops
very
more.
interesting at 200 now.
Yeah.
The Ironclad's still too much at
Yeah.
350, 360, somewhere in there.
What do you think about the allegiances for the sad armies? the sadness brigade.
Who are the sad armies? Iron Jaws, what, Gutbusters?
No, Gutbusters, but they ain't getting. They're deadly as ever.
Gutbusters are getting yeah. That was some brilliant
That was
internet
really
by
good
the
writing.
GW Twitter account. Mwah. Just brilliant.
It was the Warhammer community. Like that was like how they announced the changes, deadly as ever. What I mean by the sad armies is the armies that are never going to get another book. That they don't want to depress people who spend a lot of time painting.
Oh yeah, don't want to upset people. Like fucking Wanderers and Dispossessed. Is that the kind of things you're talking about?
Yeah, well, so specifically, I'm talking about my Dark Elves, that I have a third of 3 different
Water
armies.
Draconis.
So they gave, what are they called?
Darkling Coven.
Darkling Coven
Coven
faction abilities.
with their 4 war scrolls.
That's great. I've still got
By the way-
750 points of Darkling Coven instead of 2,000 because there's still 3 different
I'm just
fucking
gonna
armies.
we're gonna wrap this segment up by crushing these fucking people. Like, I get it, some of you, like, old head, 8th edition guys are, like, really, like, I know a few of them, and God bless all their hearts. I admire your loyalty and your perseverance. But just because GW throws you a few bones for Darkling Covens and Dispossessed and Wanderers and all this, you're not getting a book.
This is an entirely different angle. We
Stop waiting for it. It's not.
We disagree with your happiness and hope.
Yes. They are placating you, just like they haven't come out. And
Well,
said,
that's what I'm saying. You didn't think you split the book into 3 different fucking books, and then you gave me some allegiance abilities. It's like great, my crossbow ability
because they're
better.
tired. They're tired of people freaking mean tweeting them and freaking Facebook messaging them. Freaking, what about my dispossessed? What about my wanderers? It's like, isn't it obvious that they're fucking gone? They just don't want to tell you to stop playing with your models. Fuck! Buy a new army. You don't have an army anymore. You have a goddamn relic.
I'm so
move
happy you
the
found the
fuck
loose flex.
on. No, move the fuck on. I'm tired of freaking humoring these people. Like dispossessed Dan, I love you, and I know you play the army for shits and giggles.
But he
People
knows.
that.
Like,
he knows. He's not dumb. They're not like 2020 isn't going to suddenly be the year of the fucking dispossessed.
You know
or the
that.
I fucking do know that. Okay, the writing has been on the wall for a fucking while.
I want my Tolkien elf.
GW's not sitting at home in the fucking Nottingham office there like, oh, we're fucking redoing Fire Bellies. Here we fucking go, Fire Belly faction. It's not fucking happening. It's not. They just don't want to take your toys away. They don't want to take your toys away. And they know freaking gamer grognards to be some of the biggest fucking whiners in the world. And they don't want to freaking throw rocks at the bee's nest or however mixed fucking metaphors I can come up with. Just aside, I'm glad you guys got some help in the GHB. Enjoy it. But that's it. Like, it's fucking done.
This is
fucking
not what I was
play with your
asking
fucking
for.
4 war
This is
scrolls,
enjoying
finish 2 and 5, 4, 3, fucking 2 and whatever out of your fucking events, and call it a day. Anyways, let's move the fuck on. I've already talked too much about Wanderers. Wanderers. Jesus H. Christ.
I just think Sisters of the Watch should have gone down like 20 more points in Wanderers.
I do love some of those models though. Some of those kits are great, and it's a shame. No, it's a shame, but we're having to pretend like this is like an army still. Like, oh, Wanderers, oh, freaking Darkling Covens, like, oh, Phoenix Guard, like then your 2 War Scroll army.
But like that's the different. Like I actually think like Wanderers has 12 units.
Sure. Wanderers and Dispossessed are a little
The ones
different.
that have
the
a
freaking
full book is fine. The ones that I'm like, okay, thank you, but fuck you, is the ones where they split the book into a bunch of different sub-factions, and they're like, this useless sub-faction that you have a quarter of an army for.
Yeah.
Now you can allegiance.
There's literally like
That's
they had man-eaters, like just consisting of man-eaters.
There's a faction that
There was
is
a Firebelly
a
faction.
Charybdis and some Corsairs.
Yeah,
And a fleet admiral with a pig leg that just came out before
at least
the
that's
died.
more than 1 War Scroll.
That faction got a buff.
While we're
Corsairs are cheaper
we're
now.
segueing into.
All right.
I'm gonna cap off. We disagree this segment with this thing, and I know it's the internet, and you gotta take everything you read on the internet with so many grains of salt. There's not even enough in the salt.
Okay, no attribution of names to your
Yeah,
shit.
I'm not saying anybody's name, but I just thought this is why the internet is the internet. So I was just going through Reddit GHB 2019 preview, and blah blah blah. People are talking about it, and eventually at one point Skaven came up, and they were like, Skaven should get some nerfs, talking about the Nahul as it relates to all the silly terrain stuff.
Oh, because it's now technically illegal.
Yes,
until
illegal,
they-
yes,
It's not
how
going
it
to stay
needs to
that
be
way,
fixed.
but yeah.
And this is what one person said in regards to Skaven, and I quote, "Why would Skaven get nerfs? I don't know about you, but I played like 10 games with my Skaven and lost every one. I'm trying to look up some AOS tournament results. Maybe I'm looking in the wrong spot, but I'm not seeing Skaven. It's all Flesh Eaters and Deepkin and Stormcast. Skaven seem kinda, ellipsis, bad. They have a few good units." Response, "From what I've heard, it's all Scryers shooting. Skaven is one of the top armies right now." Response from the original person, "I don't believe it. Scryer got a hard nerf in the tone. Where's a good place to check out AOS tournament placings, like top 10s? And it goes on and on and on and on with this person talking about how bad their goddamn Skaven is. So, and we said we were going to go over brief battle tone review, Skaven, and that is the part of this segment where you say, we disagree with you, random Reddit guy. Random Reddit guy. We disagree.
should tell him
Originally,
how
I
to
wanted
pick.
to call this segment stupid shit people say on the internet.
But that was mean and hurtful.
But I was overruled. So instead, we're going to call it.
Only one of us could lose Black the segment.
Disagree. And now, on to the Skaven review. So, Skaven Battle Tome. Skaven, for those of you who may have been living under a rock, are not very familiar with AOS, is actually one of the more popular factions traditionally in the Warhammer AOS sort of orbit. Originally released in 5th edition fantasy, people have loved them for years and years and years. It's actually the first army I ever played. Skaven has been vastly underpowered until they got their actually it was rather a surprise battle tome, which was what, February-March timeframe. Skaven dropped right after Gloomspite, basically right alongside. Right alongside, it was a dual release with Flesh Eater Quartz. The Skaven battle tome is, I don't want to be rhetorical here. I don't want to overdo it. In my opinion, it's fucking amazing. The Skaven battle tome. It is a giant toolbox with so many different options, many of them viable, and even less than that, but some significant variation in just nasty tournament winning lists it can bring to bear.
Well, I think that's so when you look at Flesh Eater Quartz and you're like, these are overpowered, what you're talking about is Ghoul Cannon Terror guys
like 2
and
units.
Arch Regent.
Yes.
That's it.
That's
or
it.
Arch whatever.
And
when you're talking about
and one particular
in one particular subset,
within it.
There
which
is one
Griswold.
thing that got missed. And then you look at Fire Slayers and you're like, there's one unit that is...
There's a couple, but mainly one.
There's one unit that world needs fixed.
Hearthguard Berserkers.
One. And then you go Skaven and you're like, oh, there's a lot of things.
There's
that
a
are
lot.
Real cheap for what they do.
Yes.
So let's
talk a bit about those.
So do we go? So just summary real quick of what is very cheap for what it does.
Yes.
Plague Monks.
Plague Monks are so good. And by the way, don't buy some Plague Monks after you listen to this episode.
Oh, they're totally
because they're gonna get fucking crushed in the fact. If GW has any idea about what's been going on out there in the tournament meta just in the few months since Skaven book dropped, Plague Monks are woefully undercosted. Woefully. And every half-savvy fucking person who has the Plague Monks to bring to bear to a tournament has just been bringing, as you know,
I think it's 160.
160 Plague Monks I've seen, and he's played against on a table, and it's nasty. It's nasty. Continue.
I think actually, I think about like what is like really gonna go up. It's Plague Monks will go up. Jezzail should go up.
Jezzail a little bit, yeah.
And Verminlord should go up. And then the Lightning Vortex, which is in every Skaven list, is gonna go up. If it's in every list, it should go up.
Yep.
Right. But then there's a lot of other support stuff that's just really aggressively priced. Like Grey Seer is 120 point, 2 spell caster with bonuses to casting.
Yep.
The cheapest double caster in most other books is so much more than that. Mm-hmm. Like Tzeentch, you're looking at now you're looking at 160 as the bottom end post 2019. But like just having a double caster for 120,
it's super points efficient.
Yep. There's a lot of options. So
many options.
How do you want to go through? Do you want to? I don't think it makes sense to go through unit by unit. I think we should probably just talk about how the army plays.
Before we do that, and I agree, but before we do that, we've talked about
the worst army review.
We've talked about a few great units.
Well, how do you structure it?
We haven't even talked about like Storm Fiends are so appropriately cost, and they're amazing now. People were crying like desperately, like, oh, I can't take 3 Rattling Cannons now in a single freaking Storm Fiend crew. They're still amazing.
So we were doing it as a segue from like the comment that like this book is bad to talk about what's overcosted. Ricky, how do you structure that?
No, that's fine. No.
Hey, Ricky's eating his Starburst when we're talking.
You can't critique without providing a suggestion. How would you structure it?
I don't. I'm just looking for actual useful information.
Yeah. Okay. So that's what.
I don't know if you guys are just like screaming about stuff.
I'm saying Storm Fiends are great.
All right.
People talking about freaking Scryer shooting lists, it is a thing. The synergies between Warblock Engineers, the freaking the Warp tokens, I can't remember their exact nomenclature anymore, and the shooting buffs that provides a Scryer shooting list with freaking Storm Fiend spam are good. It is really good and completely viable to win 4 games in a tournament if you have half a fucking brain. We've all seen freaking Scryer shooting lists blow Gristle Gore off the fucking table. The big bad of the meta.
But that's the idea. This is not useful for how to play against Skaven. So
it's neither useful for how to use Skaven or how to play against them.
what it is saying is like there's definitely not an power book, but they're mostly going to change in cost anyway. So
well, yeah, in theory, we don't know for sure.
I would bet you $110 that Plague Monks go up.
Yeah, I think that's a fair one.
At least 20%.
Why don't we talk about the things that make Plague Monks so good for the point cost?
Yeah. So, but I think like we should probably talk more generally. Like what Skaven is going to deploy is 160 rats that
If they want.
do. If there's going to be 2 modes. There's going to be a very heavy, scryer mode that doesn't have a huge board presence, that is based on stacking shooting combos, and then there's going to be a mode that is going to be much more mixed arms. There's a high volume of just very point efficient rats, and a couple long range units. And I think that we honestly should talk about those modes completely separately, because there's very different play styles associated with them. And I think the first one is much more linear. So basically, you can get either 12 Jezzails, which are very long range and damage 2, and you stack the combination of more warp power, which gives them rerolls to hit and wound, and a Warpstone Spark that gives them +1 damage to have range, over 30-inch range. So you're going to move. You can move 2 when you have more warp power. Rerolling to hit and wound, Ren 2, damage 3, and that's going to off pretty much any given single model. And the other thing is those buffs can happen before the movement phase, which means that they can go through a Nahul. You can put a bunch of Jezzails by a Nahul, buff them up, teleport them through a Nahul, and murder something. And so to go back a little bit, Skaven has newly illegal terrain pieces called Nahuls that deploy. They can set up 3 of them anywhere within 6 inches of any board edge, and they can teleport to wholly within 6 of a Nahul, 1 unit per turn, outside an eye of an enemy. So if they're using them relatively conservatively, which they should, on sides and not really in your backfield, it allows them to redeploy very strong buffed up shooting to off something, which makes it very hard to hide from. The other thing that same kind of list can do is put those same buffs, that reroll the hit and wound and the plus damage, on a unit of 6 or 9 Storm Fiends, and just put out a lot of damage.
A lot of shooting.
So
the committed Scryer shooting lists can go toe to toe with any shooting list, if not better, in the game, including KO.
So what you do about it, the more warp power, honestly, is the critical. The actual Scryer lore is awful, except for more warp power.
Yeah.
It's a bad nuke and a mediocre self shield, and then more warp power, which gives rerolls to hit and wound, and then does damage afterwards. And so it's very much the must counter. There's actually 2 must counters, because they'll have more warp power, and then they'll have a warp lightning vortex, which I think we should probably cover as like section 3.
And that's not even talking about the warp lightning cannons.
Yeah, I honestly don't think they're that.
By themselves, they're not OP by themselves, but you add them in with
Right.
So
all this other stuff.
unreliable and unpredictable that I don't think Warp Lightning Cannon should be in any competitive list.
So the Skyer.
After seeing what I've seen out of them over several games.
Have you seen them when they work though?
Yeah, but that's when they work, right?
But that's all the
And
scary
you-
stuff's gonna
But if
happen.
you put those points into something else that's more dependable, because there is dependable stuff in the list that I don't think you need that.
The Skyer Battalion lowers the die, the power die by 1, which really changes.
Yeah, that'll change it a lot.
Yeah.
So,
but that also speaks to the strength of the book, right? That this is actually a conversation that, like, maybe I have a better option than the warp lightning cannons, which can potentially pull out 2d6 mortal wounds without a hit roll on a turn, right? And that's just one of them for what, like 160, 180,
180.
Yeah.
And they can only So warp lightning cannons, you don't roll to hit, 24-inch range, 3-inch move. You roll a power die, and then everything you roll that is equal to or greater than that power die does immortal. And that's d6. So on average, you're doing 3.5 wounds, but you can overcharge it to do 2d6, and then for every one you take d3 back. Usually you're going to survive one of those per turn, and so you're usually doing the d6, and it's effectively equivalent to d6 mortals. Usually you're doing d6 mortals per turn for 180 point, and then one turn you're going to do 2d6. The big difference is if you take them as part of a Scryer single drop battalion list, you're subtracting one from that power roll, which really changes the relative reliability of those cannons. But they are in such a good book that you're not going to see. I don't think that you see a ton of them outside that. So the downside of the Scryer list is when you're putting all these points into shooting. If you're doing a hardcore Scryer list, you don't have the same kind of chaff walls that most of the Skaven books do, and so you kind of got to run it. And the other thing is they're extremely dependent on the two spells, right? More warp power is a huge deal. Rerolls to hits and wounds, you're talking about effectively, pretty much, roughly you're doubling the damage output of the unit with that, right? So if you're countering that, you're in good shape. And you probably want to be in range to counter it because you're not going to be out of range of the shooting. I think it's a big mistake, and I have done this to place conservatively your casters to avoid them getting shot in a way where you end up being out of range to functionally dispel and still in range to get shot. So the other type of Skaven list is the big one, is basically large melee with shooting and casting support. And it's going to be very heavy on Plague Monks because Plague Monks are, God, they're 240 for 40?
It's nuts.
I thought they were 270. I still thought they were busted.
240, yeah.
The Plague
Chuck
Monks,
Chuck was telling me, I was like, that's nuts.
They're either like 5 attacks on the charge or 4 with rerolls, but they either 4s and 4s, but because they're Skaven and when they're volume, they are
+2 bravery.
Well, so they're +1 to hit and +1 to wound when they're over 30. They're +1 to hit when they're over 20, +1 to wound when they're over 30, and then they explode on 6s in different ways. And basically, the damage output of that unit, I mean, they're effectively witch elves.
Sure, and that's not even including the prayers they can get from Plague Priests, the benefits they can get from the Screaming Bell.
Well, I think it's pretty similar in the same way that witch elves get buffed and buffed by the prayers.
Yeah, I see
They're cheaper witch elves that don't have saves.
That's pretty accurate, actually.
But witch elves don't have range support. Don't have caster support, really. I mean, they do. They have Marathi.
And you can only take witch elves in blocks of 30 as opposed to 40 with.
So what do you do about 160 Plague Monks?
What did you do?
I did. I had gone Summoner, so I was taking off blocks of 20. But chaffing and selective murder, and I think part of it is when you're playing the big Skaven lists, the actual big blocks are relatively slow, and the gnaw holes are very easy to block movement through if they're placed anywhere except defensively. Because one model in the center of a gnaw hole blocks movement through it, which means you end up with large blocks that are very easy to get out of position. I don't remember if it was the game against 160 Plague Monks, but I've definitely won against Skaven by effectively saying, like, I just can't deal with that side of the board. I'm going to focus on the other side, and I'm going to redeploy a faster force to focus on collapsing a softer flank. and know that they can't get to me for a couple turns because besides the gnaw holes, they don't have significant movement shenanigans for their combat blocks, and then dealing with the larger force sort of more later on my terms.
So picking your fights very carefully.
Yeah, just accepting that you can engage the whole volume at once.
Don't try to crack the anvil of plague
Yeah, and
monks.
what I've noticed with a lot of stable players is they get it works against them too, because they can't engage with that many rats. And I have that problem with goblins.
Becomes a little bit
I
unwieldy.
have 60 goblins. I'm not fighting with 60 goblins. I'm fighting with 20 goblins all the time. Sure, I have bonuses to them, but half of them just stand there and do nothing, right? So it's true with a lot of the Skaven. So, but yeah, the plague monks, it's the death frenzy that makes them probably the hardest thing to deal with, in my opinion, because that breaks the normal order of how you would deal with big blocks like that. You can't just fly in a terrorgeist and eat them all without them also killing you.
Yeah.
So it's the porcupine kind of thing.
So I think that goes back to like when we're talking about the shooting list, more warp power is a must counter. We're talking about melee. Like if you are to play against a bunch of plague monks and you're playing a melee list, then Death Frenzy becomes a must
Death
counter.
Frenzy is the thing to stop always. Let the trigger triangle go off. Who cares?
I think that depends on what list you're playing with.
Stop that Death Frenzy, because that's what really wins the game.
If you're in a melee mirror,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Sure.
if you're in a melee mirror, and I think that's probably so. There's so Death Frenzy allows you to attack after you die, and the Warp Lightning Vortex is doing damage over time to a lot of stuff, but it's relatively decentralized except for whatever's at the center of the triangle.
Mm-hmm.
And so, if you're playing a shooting list, you probably don't care about Death Frenzy. If you're playing melee versus melee and you're planning on engaging that block, it becomes much more important counter.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I had to learn playing with and against Skaven is how do you deal with the Warp Lightning Vortex? And I think that the summary is like it needs to be a factor in your deployment. When I deploy against Warp Lightning Vortex, I'm making sure that there's no point where they're hitting more than 3 units with it, and I'm trying to make it very difficult to put casters that are particularly vulnerable in a space where they could be in the center of the triangle, because there's a big difference between taking D3 mortals on a 4-up twice and D3 mortals on a 2-up twice.
Yeah.
I think if you haven't played against Warp Lightning Vortex very much, what you can't really do is be just out of range of it. Like you can't be like most spells in this game are relatively short range. Warp Lightning Vortex, the first point has to be wholly within 26, but then the other 2 points are it's a 7-inch triangle, so should be better at math, but a 7-inch equal triangle. The straight side of that is about 5, so you're really looking more like 31. And then it's within 6 inches of that. So the threat range is really more like 37 inches without any range modifiers. So you're probably not going to deploy outside of the threat range with your army. Like it's going to hit you. It's not about avoiding it hitting you. It's about knowing that the Skaven player is going to have bonuses to cast. They're going to be in range. They're going to be able to hit stuff. And how do you spread out to the point where when they cast it on you, they're doing it because they know they want to get it out turn 1, but the actual damage coming out of it is relatively minor, and you can then walk away from that area or dispel it. Often I think you don't dispel it. Like when I was playing with Skaven, actually Ricky did the most successful thing against it, which was to you hand the Gork 1 unit out because cheater. And Gork's done. But mostly you just walked away from it.
Yeah, just leave it. Every time I have go out against me, I just walk away from it, leave it take the damage that I can and just get away from it and then leave it, because I'm not gonna waste the time dispelling it. It's a 9 to get to dispel. That means it's a 9 for them too. So once it's sitting there and it's not useful to them,
Right.
they would have to go 2 casts. And by then, I've usually killed 1 or 2 of their support characters, so those casts are even more important. And for them to dispel and then try and recast it is just untenable at that point. So yeah, and it sucks. It sucks when your dog boss is in the middle of it and you just have to pray that you make every 4 up to ignore it. Before he waddles out of there, but that's just what you got to do.
As currently costed, would you say trigger the word lightning vortex is auto take in Escape-less?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, it's auto.
No question.
At 100 points, it's still auto take. That's pretty impressive.
Well, it should realistically, as it's written, be about 200 points.
Oh, I don't disagree. I'm just saying, even you usually think 100-point endless spell ring, like, oh my god, no way. But that's like an amazing spell for 100 points.
Yeah, and
I
the
hope
thing
it goes
that-
to 140, but I think it'll go to 120.
The thing that I always think is kind of weird with it is that most Skaven players that I've seen use it are using it really, like Matt was just describing, offensively throwing it into your line on turn 1. I think the thing you would want to do with it more than that is use it to defensively. Put it in front of their line, and then they can, if you put it around them, they can move out of it and be out of it in one turn. Put it in front of them, they have to go all the way around it, and I think that using it to block whole areas of movement, or even a whole objective, if you block an entire objective with that, like one that they stacked the deck on, and then you just play for the other 2,
That's amazing.
That's gonna save your bacon. And
For sure.
so that I like what he's saying, where you can throw it into their line. Sure, that's good, but then you do just walk right out of it. And
For sure.
So I mean, but that's another. So when you're thinking about deploying against it, if you're in a scenario where there's 2 objectives in your deployment zone, you probably want and say if you think of yourself as having 3 points, the 2 objectives and the mid zone in between, you probably want the place that is the most advantageous for your opponent to place the Warp Lightning Vortex to be the mid zone, so that they're choosing between disrupting an objective and doing damage.
yeah,
So, sort of to encapsulate all that, Skaven, top tier battle tome, yes, no?
Yeah, I mean, for now, we'll see in a month.
Yeah,
right?
as it currently stands.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you even think there's much they could really do in the GHB short of like egregious point increases to change that?
Yeah, because I don't think it's not broken. It's just really aggressively costed.
I'm not saying it's broken.
No, I know,
I'm
but
saying it's
like-
really strong.
Okay, so when you take Bristlegore, you have particular mechanic interactions that are a problem. I don't think that Skaven has that. I think it just has
Just
stuff that's scaled really well.
Well,
and
the
so
only thing that is the trigger triangle, because it goes off in the movement phase as well.
Yeah.
But otherwise, everything else,
Yeah, and you just raise the cost on that, and it should be
and
okay.
you raise that to the point where it is a choice.
Mhm.
Do I take a second Vermin Lord, or do I take the triangle?
Yep.
Then it becomes a choice, and
For
then I
sure.
think it's a fair choice.
Decision points, right?
Yeah.
That's what this show
But-
sort of encourages.
But as it stands now, it is so cheap that it's
I think
easily auto take.
I think if the Vermin Lord started at 300, the Warp Lightning Vortex was 140, and Plague Monks were 300, and Jezzail's went up slightly. I think it would just be a really solid book.
yeah.
Yeah, and there's, in my opinion, sort of just closing
and
thoughts.
Storm Vermin come down to free.
Yeah, Stormvermin need to come down.
We don't want to run this segment too long, and I know everybody's kind of getting tired.
If you were having a bad time with Skaven,
Um,
and it's because you had a lot of Stormvermin, it's because they're not very good right now.
Yeah, they're just they're a little too.
they're overcosted. So parting shot there being
By about 200 points.
Skaven is a really strong book. If people were interested, we could go further into it. If you're having problems,
There's videos.
Yeah,
on
there's
the
videos.
screen.
If you're having problems building a strong competitive skating list, I suggest you look again. Maybe search the internet. Maybe read some battle reports. Maybe read some tournament recaps. Many
This
of
poor
them.
person on Reddit is gonna be like,
Mini on AOS Shorts. You look at AOS Shorts in the last since the Skaven book came out, every single top 5 basically has at least a Skaven list, one Skaven list. I've seen some with 2 Skaven lists in the top 5. Skaven is super strong right now. They're not OP by any means, but it's a good, well-rounded book, and if you're a Skaven player, you will get a lot out of it. Just look again is all I can suggest to you. Any other closing thoughts before we wrap this up?
novels are illegal.
What's that?
Novels are illegal.
Novels are currently illegal. Hopefully, it kind of in actual.
Novels are going to be illegal.
Hopefully, the FAQ changes that.
Yeah.
So now, no more novels.
We'll have more of these as we go along. If anybody has any suggestions,
I mean, if anyone
requests,
watches them, what happens?
if anybody even gives a shit, please let us know, and we could do other things. Cheerio.
God, that's the worst ending ever.
Wow, that's embarrassing. That's fucking embarrassing.
Fuck. Cheerio.
I'm trying to be chipper, all right? Too many profanity laced. Oh, y'all go to fucking hell.